Cluboratory at Miles of Golf. I'm Luke. I'm joined by one of our expert club fitters today, Justin Paul. Justin, what's up, man?
How's it going, guys?
Today we are looking at a brand new line of irons from Mizuno. It is their storied Mizuno Pro line, consisting of the 241, the 243, and the 245. Now, the 241 is their classic muscle back. That is the butter knife that you're looking down at address. The 243 is more of a muscle cavity, which is a little bit more mass behind the face for someone that wants a little bit more forgiveness, but still with that tour look at address. And then we have the 245, which is their hollow body player's distance iron. So obviously new irons means new tech. No one's just gonna come out with the same exact club they did 2 years ago and just try to rebadge it. They're gonna do something different to it. What are we seeing in terms of changes with the 241 in your hands right now?
Now, with how good Mizuno's irons in the past have always been, it's not a massive change, but it has massive differences in performance and specifically feel. So the first thing that I love that they did is they actually tightened up this back badging. And so everything is a little bit more centered. So if you have a solid strike in the dead center of the club, you're rewarded for that feel. Great, love that. The other thing that I'm really excited about that they did is they added a little bit more bounce while still maintaining the same amount of camber that they've always had. So this club will get into the turf a little bit quicker, as well as out of the turf a little bit quicker. So you'll be able to hit a little bit better shots out of different lies.
It might give you a little bit more versatility.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah. And then talk to me about just the overall look of this club when you're sitting it down at address. Does it change at all from what you saw in the 221?
They did thin up the top line a little bit, which I think is amazing. Yeah, obviously it's a butter knife. She looks good. She's sexy, and it's everything you could want out of a muscle back.
Yep. They say nothing feels like a Mizuno. Nothing also looks like a Mizuno. So building off on changes in each of these clubs that we saw from the previous model, we noted that with Mizuno, a lot of times we don't always see very big changes. They're more minute, center of gravity, maybe a top line change. In the 243, their muscle cavity, we actually see a rather large change in how the iron is built. What are we looking at with this guy?
Yep. So from the original grain flow forged, carbon steel, we're now looking at a chromoly steel that is typically used in their JPX line.
Yep.
The biggest benefit of this steel is it is a little bit firmer, which also allows for faster ball speed. A little bit higher launch, more consistent spin with these longer irons.
And why would we want to see a little bit of a higher launch with this sort of iron?
Typically speaking, a lot of people are going to struggle when you get to these stronger lofts.
Yep.
Now speed is dependent on spin, which helps generate height. A lot of people don't have speed. And so if we can get a metal that automatically launches the ball a little bit higher without you having to try any harder, it's a great product.
Yeah, win-win.
Yeah.
We see that chromoly steel from the 4-iron to the 7-iron. What happens after that 7-iron?
So then you go back into the grain flow forged carbon steel into the scoring irons, 8-iron down to gap wedge. Now I love that because now you're getting close to the green and you need feel. You need that responsiveness. You don't necessarily need that pop. You need to be able to control your spin, control your speed.
And then the final of the 3 heads that we're going to be looking at today is the 245. Now this is a composition that is very popular in today's game. It's hollow body, it's a player's distance iron. It looks really good to set down. It doesn't have a lot of offset, a really big top line. It's nice to look at, but offers a lot of forgiveness. What did they change with this one comparative to the 225 that we saw?
They did a really good job of using tungsten in the proper spot, usually pulling it more middle, which they did, to create a little bit more forgiveness behind the center spot and also a little bit higher launch.
And then higher launch with this iron is going to be very important because loft-wise, all 3 of these 7-irons are different. The 221, the blade, we're looking at a 34-degree 7-iron. The 243, we're looking at a 32-degree 7-iron. And then that 245 in your hand right now, we're looking at a 30-degree 7-iron.
Yes.
So to still reach the peak height that we want and a good launch angle, we're going to have to move around where that tungsten or the center of gravity is in general to make sure that, hey, this iron is going to launch well enough for what a 7-iron is supposed to do.
Exactly, yeah. That landing or that stopping power that everybody wants and needs, you need this center of gravity placement at this loft to still be able to generate that height.
And then all 3 of these irons could technically be blended together, couldn't
yes, absolutely. Mizuno's true to their word. They want you to be able to mix and match how you want, but they also want to make distinct differences between each of the 3.
So we could potentially see like a 3 and a 4 iron in the 245, a 5, a 6 iron iron in the 243, maybe even the 7, and then you go down into those scoring irons, then you want that butter knife to look at. You want something you can shape a little bit. That's when that 241 comes into play. I'm very excited to see what you do with these in your hand.
Yeah.
We're both Mizuno slappies. We can put that out there. We've played Mizuno for most of our competitive careers. I'm very excited to see what you think about these. Let's start with the 241. And then one note real quick before we start hitting, we are using yellow range balls today. We always like to use premium urethane golf balls if we can. It's going to give us the best result in terms of what this iron is doing. But we're in Michigan. Sometimes the elements aren't always in our favor. Right now it's somewhat tough to pick golf balls for us, so we don't have our full collection of our premium golf balls, but don't fear, we have TrackMan set on the normalized feature, so we should still see the sort of numbers we would want if it was a Pro V1.
Boy, that feel good.
It's like hitting the golf ball dead straight. That works about every single time. Now, after 2 swings, talk about how it feels going through. I know it's not real turf, we have a mat down there, but are you noticing any difference of the different camber on the bottom?
It does feel like it's moving quickly.
Perfect.
Very quickly through the ball. Now, what I really am noticing is I did hit those really well, and I did enjoy both of those strikes with any club I would have put in my hand. That felt amazing.
Awesome.
That felt really good.
Just tugged it a little bit. Wind's grabbing it out there. It's going to accentuate that curvature a little bit. But let's talk about this too real quick. You pulled that. You pull something, closes effective loft down. We might see that ball go a little bit farther. That's still carried within 1 yard of any of those first 2 shots you hit.
That's amazing.
That's why you're going to play an iron like this, is for distance dispersion. You middled that one.
That felt really good.
Yeah.
That felt really good. That is my stock ball flight right there.
Yep. 17 degrees of launch, 7,600 RPMs of spin, 174 in the air, falling at 53 degrees. We're talking birdies. We're talking birdies. I've played a lot of golf with you. I know your game pretty decently. This is right on what I would expect with these irons from you. Yeah, it's perfect.
I loved every bit of the feel. Now, I haven't looked at the numbers yet, but from how this felt, I can't complain about what that ball flight looked like.
So now we're going to take a look at the 243. Before even hitting it, what are you going to expect out of this club compared to the 241, the blade?
First off, being 2 degrees stronger, this should go a little bit farther, and it should take off a touch faster.
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
That's what I'm expecting.
And then also with what we're talking about with the different material in it, it should still keep that height even though it's a little bit stronger.
Absolutely. And now one thing I'm curious about is how it feels relative to that 241 with it being a different metal.
Yep. It definitely had a different sound.
It definitely felt a little bit different, but it felt really good.
Ball speed jumped immediately up, kind of what we would expect. Very similar launch. It's really good to see. A little bit lower spin, a little bit farther distance. But pretty much the same exact height. I'm going to be curious to see if that continues.
Boy, that feel good.
Very similar launch, a little bit touch higher spin. Because of that, the distance dropped down a little bit, but the ball speed still kept up with what we think something at 32 degrees would be. Honestly, pretty similar in terms of overall carry. Ball speed was dropped down a little bit. You may have misstruck it a little bit.
Yeah, I think I healed it.
Going dead straight too. Not as much curvature as we saw in the last one, which would be expected. A little bit more mass behind the face.
Yep, a little
bit farther distance. Again, a little bit lower spin. Everything we would expect to see out of this. Let's see if we get one more good swing out of this. That'll do.
That'll do.
It's your best smash factor so far, so we know we really struck that one in the dead center of that golf club. That last shot right there, I think, is evident of what we would normally see with that one. We had a couple misses in there, but 16 degrees of launch, 6,200 RPMs of spin. So that's drastically lower than what we saw with the blade, 185 carry. So everything that we kind of thought, while height was still staying pretty similar. And now the final of the three brand new irons from Mizuno, the 245. Unless it was a 2-iron, this isn't something we would normally see in your bag.
No, definitely is not. The biggest thing is the amount of loft that it has. Now I'm a higher swing speed player, so this goes a little bit too far for what I like for my gapping, but for a lot of people, this could be really good. And
then what I'm going to be most curious about to see with this iron is, you just said you're a higher speed player. These hollow body irons, sometimes with that cup face technology, we can see maybe not the best distance dispersion at those higher speeds with that kind of trampoline-like effect. So I'm going to be really curious to see what Mizuno does with an iron like this and see how close we can keep those yardages together.
I'm excited.
Mm-hmm. That's a rocket ship.
It felt really good. Did not feel hollow.
Which is really good.
Yeah, that's surprising. That's amazing.
Spin definitely dropped down, 200 carry. Houston, do we have clearance for that?
Wow. That's all I can say is wow.
Jesus.
That is on a string.
It's going dead straight. Yeah. We're seeing that tungsten go to work right there, too. That ball's not moving. That's 4 feet of curvature.
My goodness.
Turn that one over just a touch, but still a good shot. If you hit that on the golf course, you're not going to be mad at that by any means.
Boy, that felt good.
They say nothing feels like Mizuno.
I think they did a really good job of making this feel like it's not hollow body.
I love that. Because that's, I mean, a feedback we get a lot of times when we're handing these players distance irons is, hey man, just doesn't feel good. And leave it to Mizuno to put that to rest.
Love it.
All right. So now that we've hit each one, we took our 5 best from each of these 3 irons. Let's take a look at the results. We're going to start with the 241, an iron that you pretty much play. You still play the MP20s, don't you? Mm-hmm. From 4 years ago.
Yep.
Sometimes hard to get rid of a good tool.
It's tough.
We might find your replacement though, because these are your exact numbers that I'm used to seeing for you. 17 degrees of launch, 7,600 RPMs of spin, 172 in the air. And then the most important thing that we can see with irons is your distance dispersion was plus or minus 1.8 yards.
It's insane. That's amazing. I love that.
We always say it's not how far, it's how often you're hitting that thing, the same exact yardage every single time. Let's then take that into the 243 and pretty much the exact same club bed speed. You were at 93.8 with the 243, 93.2 with the 241. But with that, we saw an increase of carry. We were at 180 in the air with the 243. We were right at that like kind of 172 number with the 241. So that's exactly what we're expected to see. Same exact club head speed, a little bit more distance, a little bit less spin, everything we would kind of expect with an iron like that. The one thing we wanted to look at was height. And we lowered the loft a little bit, curious to see if we can still get it up in the air. We did exactly that. With the 241, you averaged 113 feet in the air. Going into the 243, 112 feet in the air. The exact same peak height, give or take a yard.
It's impressive.
And then what else? One other thing I wanted to look at why we might put someone into these irons comparative to 241 is curvature. Just maybe dialing that in a little bit more mass behind the face. 25 feet of average curvature with the 243, 27 with the 241. Now, you're a really good ball striker. We know everything's gonna stay somewhat similar, but we did see just a little bit tighter in terms of dispersion. And then finally, we're gonna take it into the 245, the rocket ship that we saw. You swung it a little bit faster. I think that's because you probably wanted to see that 200 number pop up. And we pretty much matched that. You were carrying it 198 on average, 16 degrees of launch, 5,000 RPM to spin. Again, a little bit too low for what we would want to see if I was fitting you into a set of irons. But the all-important metric that I wanted to look at was the distance dispersion on it, plus or minus 2 yards with a hollow body iron. Can't beat that.
That's something you don't see.
With higher speed players, what we don't want is that flyer out of the middle of the fairway. I said it at the beginning with the 241, it's not how far, it's how often. You hit this the same exact yardage pretty much every single time. And keeping with that same trend, it just got a little bit tighter, 22 feet of average curvature. So 241, 243, 245. Mizuno did exactly what they said they were going to do with each of these irons. Talk to me about your opinions between each while you were hitting them.
241, it's a muscle back. It's something that I've been used to playing with the MP20, and I loved it. I mean, that thing felt amazing. It looked like butter, it felt like butter. The ball flight was very similar to what I'm used to.
Yep.
Now, the 243, I was curious, especially with them switching over to the Kamali, and it was surprisingly good.
Okay.
Like, it is a little bit firmer. It is a touch firmer. It's not a bad thing, though. You can feel it. It feels good. It feels fast. It feels stable, and it's still spun. So the ball flight is still had that trajectory where you're going to stop it on a green.
Yep.
Now the 245, it's a hollow body and did not feel like it, but boy, did that ball take off fast.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the biggest jump we saw in distance, and that's what we would expect.
Yeah, exactly.
And this just goes to show that not all 7 irons are created equal. What your 7 iron is might be different than what your buddy's is, and we just kind of made that evident between these 3. I think Mizuno stays on top of the mountain in terms of irons. It's going to be hard to kick them off of that.
Absolutely.
Year after year, they come out with really good products. And the next time you come in, you got to try these out. All right, well, that about wraps it up. Thank you guys very much for watching. If there's other clubs you want to see us review or other video ideas you have that you might want to see us do, please leave that in the comments below. But other than that, see you later.